Think Spain is just about flamenco dancers and bullfights? Wait until you find out this country forces you to pass an exam just to sing in the streets, fines you 3,000 euros for building sandcastles, and operates on the wrong time zone because of Hitler. You won't believe what happens when you walk shirtless through Barcelona or try to grab lunch at 2 in the afternoon. Number 15. Spain operates on the wrong time zone because of a World War II dictator. Every single clock in Spain is set 1 hour ahead of where it should naturally be, and it's been that way for over 80 years. In 1940, Francisco Franco, Spain's military dictator, decided to align Spain's clocks with Nazi Germany as a show of support for Adolf Hitler during World War II. He moved Spain from Greenwich Mean Time to Central European Time, shifting everything forward by 60 minutes. The sun rises later, sets later, and Spaniards have been living in the wrong time zone ever since. This wasn't a temporary wartime measure. Franco never changed it back, and neither did anyone after him. Picture what this means for daily life. Spain sits at roughly the same longitude as Britain and Portugal, yet while London experiences sunset at a reasonable hour, Madrid doesn't see darkness until 10 or 11 at night during summer. Spaniards wake up when it's still pitch black outside, eat lunch when their biological clocks say it's breakfast time, and go to bed well past midnight because the sun hasn't set. According to a 2016 poll, less than 18% of Spaniards actually sleep during the famous siesta hours anymore, but they're still stuck with the bizarre schedule that makes work days stretch endlessly into the night. This time zone disaster creates what locals call time poverty. Many shops close for 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon, not because people are napping, but because that's when Spaniards eat lunch, the biggest meal of the day. Schools don't release kids until 4 or 5 in the afternoon. Offices keep workers until 8 or 9 at night. The whole country runs on a schedule that's fundamentally misaligned with the sun's actual position in the sky. Spain's Time Use Institute reports that 30% of Spanish women with families experience complete absence of personal time because of these extended schedules. Think about working the same number of hours as everyone else in Europe, but having your workday stretch from 9 in the morning until 9 at night because of a decision Hitler's buddy made 8 decades ago. Number 14. Walking shirtless in Spanish cities can cost you 300 euros. You're strolling through Barcelona on a scorching summer day, sweating through your clothes, and you think, I'll just take my shirt off for a minute to cool down. Stop right there. In Barcelona, Malaga, and the entire Balearic Islands, including Majorca and Ibiza, walking around shirtless or in swimwear anywhere outside actual beaches or pools can slam you with fines up to 300 euros. This applies to both men and women, tourists and locals, city centers and residential streets. You heard right. Spain has made being shirtless in urban areas a finable offense. The Spanish Traffic Department has extended this prohibition even further. Driving shirtless, whether you're the driver or passenger, can result in fines ranging from 80 to 200 euros. Their reasoning? Seatbelt safety concerns, and the potential for injuries. Never mind that millions of people drive shirtless in other countries without issue. In Spain, your bare chest behind the wheel is considered dangerous enough to warrant official penalties. Local authorities patrol tourist areas, specifically looking for people violating these dress code regulations. Think about the irony here. Spain attracts millions of beach tourists every year, people who fly thousands of miles specifically to enjoy the Mediterranean sun and show some skin. Yet the moment you step off the sand and onto the pavement, you're breaking the law. Walk from your hotel to the beach in your swim trunks? That's a potential 300 euro fine. Drive to the coast without a shirt? Another 200 euros. Meanwhile, in the United States, going shirtless is a constitutionally protected form of expression in many places. But Spain has decided that bare torsos threaten public decency and safety enough to justify hefty financial penalties. Local enforcement officers don't care that you're hot, that you're a tourist who didn't know, or that you're only 50 feet from the beach. Cover up or pay up. Number 13. Spain forces street musicians to pass official exams before they can perform. Imagine you're a talented guitar player visiting Madrid. You find a charming plaza, open your case to collect tips, and start strumming. Within minutes, police arrive and inform you that singing or playing music on Madrid streets without official permission constitutes vandalism. Yes, vandalism. Street performing in Madrid requires passing a municipal exam and obtaining a license, a regulation introduced during Ana Botella's tenure as mayor specifically to combat noise pollution. If you perform without authorization, you're not just asked to move along, you face official charges. This exam isn't a casual formality. Aspiring street performers must demonstrate musical competency, knowledge of permitted performance areas, understanding of noise regulations, and adherence to time restrictions. You can't just be good at music. You need to prove it to government bureaucrats who determine whether your skills meet official standards. Only after passing this examination can you legally earn money from your art on public streets. Break these rules and authorities consider your music an act of vandalism comparable to graffiti or property damage. Compare this to cities like New York, London, or Paris, where street performers add vibrant cultural atmosphere to public spaces without needing government approval. Musicians contribute to the urban soundtrack, entertaining passers-by and enriching city life spontaneously and organically. But Madrid has decided that unregulated artistic expression creates unacceptable noise problems. Think about what this means for musical culture. Young artists can't test their material in front of live audiences. Foreign musicians can't share their talents while traveling. Spontaneous cultural moments can't happen because the government requires licensing, testing, and bureaucratic approval before anyone can play a single note in public. Spain has literally criminalized unlicensed singing, transforming street performance from artistic expression into punishable vandalism. Number 12. Spain once ruled an empire so vast the sun never set on Spanish territory. At its peak in the late 18th century, the Spanish Empire controlled land on every single inhabited continent simultaneously. Spain possessed territory in Europe, throughout the Americas from California to Patagonia, across Africa, throughout Asia including the Philippines, and even Pacific Islands. This made Spain's empire one of the largest in human history, and certainly the most geographically dispersed. The famous phrase, "the empire on which the sun never sets," originally described Spain's dominion long before the British adopted it. At any given moment, somewhere in Spanish territory, the sun was shining. The Spanish Empire began with Christopher Columbus reaching the Americas in 1492 and grew rapidly through conquest and colonization. By the mid-16th century, Spanish conquistadors had destroyed the Aztec and Inca empires, established the viceroyalties of New Spain and Peru, and claimed massive portions of two continents. Spain's navy dominated the oceans through their experienced galleons and treasure fleets that transported unimaginable quantities of gold and silver from American mines back to European coffers. Their tercios, elite infantry formations, were considered the finest military units in Europe for over a century. But here's the uncomfortable reality that Spanish textbooks often minimize. This empire was built on genocidal violence and enslavement. Spanish conquistadors massacred millions of indigenous people throughout the Americas. Diseases brought by Europeans killed countless more, devastating populations that had no immunity to Old World pathogens. The Spanish forced surviving native peoples into brutal labor systems like the encomienda and mita, essentially slavery by different names. They extracted wealth through violence while imposing Catholicism through the Inquisition, which tortured and executed anyone who refused conversion. The Spanish Empire became fabulously wealthy, but that wealth came from the blood, land, and resources stolen from indigenous peoples across multiple continents. By the 19th century, independence movements dismantled most of Spanish America, and by 1976, with the death of Franco and decolonization of Spanish Sahara, the empire finally ended after nearly 500 years of expansion, exploitation, and eventual collapse. Number 11. You can be fined €750 for digging through trash in Seville. You're walking through Seville and see someone rummaging through a public garbage bin, maybe looking for recyclables or searching for something they lost. That person is committing an offense that can result in a €750 fine. Seville's cleaning and waste management bylaws explicitly prohibit people from going through trash containers, treating it as a serious violation worthy of substantial financial penalties. This law was strengthened in 2003 when the economic crisis hit and increased numbers of people in financial hardship began searching through refuse for valuables or necessities. Think about the cruelty of this regulation. During economic collapse, when unemployment soared and families struggled to afford food, Seville's municipal government decided the appropriate response was fining desperate people trying to survive. Instead of providing social services or economic assistance, they criminalized poverty. Someone searching for recyclable cans to sell for a few euros faces a fine equivalent to weeks of income. A homeless person looking for discarded food that would otherwise rot in a landfill can be punished with fees they have absolutely no ability to pay. This law exemplifies how cities prioritize appearance over humanity. Seville wants to present a clean, tourist-friendly image, where poverty isn't visible in public spaces. If people in need stay hidden, tourists can enjoy their vacation without confronting uncomfortable economic realities. Meanwhile, the same city allows religious brotherhoods called hermandades to launch rockets and create massive noise from 9 in the morning until 11 at night during pilgrimages. Noise pollution from religious celebrations? Perfectly fine. Poor people trying to survive? €750 fine. The hypocrisy reveals exactly whose interests these laws protect, and it's definitely not the most vulnerable members of society. Spain, like many European nations, prides itself on social welfare systems, yet Seville actively punishes those who fall through the cracks. Number 10. Spain's national anthem has no words and never will. Stand for Spain's national anthem at a soccer match or official ceremony, and you'll hear a stirring instrumental melody called the Marcha Real, or Royal March. What you won't hear is a single word of lyrics. Because Spain's anthem is one of only 4 national anthems in the entire world with no official text. This isn't an oversight or temporary situation. Multiple attempts have been made over centuries to add lyrics, but every proposal has failed, and the anthem remains stubbornly wordless. The Marcha Real dates back to 1761, making it one of the oldest national anthems still in use. Various lyrics have been proposed throughout Spanish history, especially during moments of national crisis or political transition. During Franco's dictatorship from 1939 to 1975, an official text existed praising the dictator and fascist ideology, but those lyrics were immediately abandoned after Franco's death and the restoration of democracy. Since then, numerous poets, musicians, and politicians have suggested new lyrics celebrating Spanish unity, history, or values. Every attempt has collapsed under controversy. Here's why adding words is impossible. Spain isn't a unified nation with a single identity. It's a collection of distinct regions with their own languages, cultures, and independence movements. Catalans, Basques, and Galicians speak their own languages and maintain strong regional identities separate from Spanish nationalism. Any lyrics praising Spain or Spanish unity would immediately trigger separatist backlash from regions that don't want to be part of Spain at all. Lyrics in Spanish would offend Catalans who speak Catalan. References to Castilian history would anger Basques. Mentioning Catholicism would alienate secular Spaniards. The anthem has no words because Spain has no shared national narrative that everyone agrees on. The silence speaks volumes about Spain's fractured identity. At international sporting events, Spaniards stand awkwardly humming while other nations belt out their anthems with pride and unity. Number 9. Building sandcastles on Tenerife beaches can earn you massive fines. So, you're vacationing in Tenerife, one of Spain's beautiful Canary Islands. Your kids want to build sandcastles, a quintessentially innocent beach activity enjoyed by children worldwide. You start digging in the sand, shaping towers and moats, creating elaborate structures. Then, beach authorities approach and inform you that making sandcastles is forbidden and subject to fines. Yes, you read that correctly. Spain has actually banned building sandcastles on certain beaches, and Tenerife isn't alone in prohibiting this childhood pastime. Various Spanish beach municipalities have implemented regulations against sandcastle construction, claiming these temporary sculptures create hazards for other beachgoers or interfere with beach maintenance. Never mind that sandcastles dissolve with the next wave or tide. Never mind that billions of children have built sandcastles throughout human history without causing societal collapse. Spanish authorities have decided that piles of sand shaped by children's hands constitute problems serious enough to warrant official prohibition and financial penalties. But Spain's beach regulations extend far beyond sandcastles. In Culera, Valencia, leaving an umbrella unattended to reserve your spot can result in fines up to €3,000. €3,000 for an umbrella. Torrox in Malaga was one of the first towns to ban this practice in 2014, with potential penalties of €300. The umbrella wars have become so intense that municipalities now employ officers who patrol beaches specifically looking for reservation attempts. Spaniards wake up at dawn to claim prime beach positions, rushing to the sand like it's Black Friday shopping. Those who arrive later find the best spots already claimed by unattended umbrellas, beach towels, and chairs. Rather than accept first-come first-served as a natural beach dynamic, Spain has criminalized the practice and created an enforcement bureaucracy around it. Meanwhile, in most of the world, People simply move someone's stuff if they've been gone too long. But in Spain, umbrella placement has become a finable offense requiring government intervention. Number 8. Spain forces prostitutes to wear reflective safety vests while working. In Els Alames, a town in Catalonia, local authorities faced a problem. Sex workers congregated at a traffic circle near the highway, creating what officials considered a safety hazard for both the workers and passing motorists. Rather than addressing the root causes of prostitution or providing social services, the town passed a law in 2010 requiring all sex workers in that location to wear yellow reflective safety vests, the kind typically worn by construction workers or traffic controllers. The reasoning? Visibility and traffic safety. Think about the absurdity and degradation inherent in this regulation. Prostitution is legal in Spain, but instead of regulating it through health and safety standards or providing protections for workers in a vulnerable profession, this town decided the primary concern was whether motorists could see sex workers clearly in the dark. The law essentially treats human beings engaged in survival sex work the same as highway construction equipment, objects that need to be visible to prevent accidents. There's no consideration for the dignity, safety, or welfare of the people forced to wear these vests, only concern about traffic flow and driver convenience. This regulation exemplifies Spain's contradictory approach to sex work. Prostitution itself is legal. Operating brothels is legal. Profiting from others' sex work is legal. Yet municipalities create degrading, dehumanizing regulations that treat sex workers as public nuisances rather than people deserving of basic respect and protections. The reflective vest requirement has become internationally infamous as an example of tone-deaf policy that prioritizes appearances and convenience over human dignity. Els Alames could have provided safe indoor locations, could have offered exit programs or social services, could have done literally anything that treats sex workers as human beings deserving of support. Instead, they said, put on this vest so cars don't hit you, and called it a solution. Number 7. Spain banned throwing rice at weddings to protect people from tripping. Picture a beautiful wedding ceremony in Cadiz, Spain. The bride and groom emerge from the church, glowing with happiness, ready for the traditional rice shower that symbolizes prosperity and fertility. But wait, throwing rice is illegal in Cadiz. In 2007, the city banned the centuries-old tradition of tossing rice at newlyweds, citing two primary concerns: injuries from people slipping on rice scattered across church steps and pavement, and the explosion of pigeon populations attracted to the grain-carpeting public areas. Cadiz wasn't the first Spanish city to prohibit wedding rice, and it certainly wasn't the last. Municipalities across Spain have implemented similar bans, treating this harmless tradition as a public safety hazard, an environmental problem serious enough to warrant legal prohibition. The reasoning focuses on couples and guests potentially tripping on rice grains, turning joyful celebrations into slip-and-fall accidents. Additionally, authorities worried that pigeons would flock to churches and plazas to feast on the rice, creating unsanitary conditions and aggressive bird populations that harass locals and tourists. Here's the thing though, weddings have involved throwing rice for hundreds of years across countless cultures without society descending into chaos. Yes, someone might theoretically slip on a rice grain. Someone might also slip on a wet leaf, a crack in the pavement, or their own shoelaces. The risk is minimal and easily managed by sweeping up afterward. As for pigeons, perhaps address the underlying pigeon population issues rather than banning traditional celebrations. But Spain took the extraordinary step of criminalizing this practice, transforming wedding traditions into prohibited activities. Now, couples must use bubbles, flower petals, or nothing at all. The rice ban represents Spain's broader tendency to regulate every aspect of public life down to the smallest detail, micromanaging cultural traditions through legal prohibitions backed by potential fines. It's the kind of overreach that makes people wonder whether government has lost perspective on what actually constitutes problems worth solving through law enforcement. Number 6. You cannot name your child after Hitler, Judas, or several dozen other forbidden names. Spain maintains an official list of prohibited baby names that parents cannot legally use when registering newborns. This list includes obvious choices like Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Osama bin Laden, Saddam Hussein, and Lenin. But it extends far beyond dictators and terrorists. You cannot name your Spanish child Judas, Cain, Lucifer, or Satan, religious figures associated with betrayal and evil. You cannot use names that Spanish authorities consider potentially harmful to the child's dignity or well-being, which gives registry officials broad discretion to reject names they personally find inappropriate. The regulations go even further into micromanaging parental choices. You cannot name a child after celebrities unless your family surname matches the celebrity's last name. Want to name your son Michael Jackson? Only permissible if your family name is actually Jackson. Otherwise, rejected. You cannot use acronyms as names. You cannot give two siblings identical names. You cannot use compound names with more than two parts. So Jose Luis is acceptable, but Jose Luis Marcos gets rejected because it's too long. Spain has essentially decided that parents cannot be trusted to name their own children without government oversight and approval. This level of state control over personal family decisions is remarkable. In most countries, parents have nearly unlimited freedom to name their children whatever they want, for better or worse. Some of those names might be questionable or unusual, but it's generally accepted that parents, not government bureaucrats, should make these intimate family choices. Spain has taken the opposite approach, creating detailed regulations about acceptable names and empowering registry officials to overrule parents who select names from the prohibited list. The stated justification is protecting children from names that might cause teasing or difficulty in life. But it's also a paternalistic assertion that the state knows better than families what names are appropriate. Spain's naming laws reveal how deeply the government involves itself in citizens' private lives, regulating decisions that most nations consider fundamentally personal and beyond government authority. Seville has made playing dominoes and dice on the outdoor terraces of bars and cafes explicitly illegal through municipal ordinances designed to combat noise pollution. The distinctive clacking sound of dominoes hitting tables apparently disturbed enough residents and city officials that they decided to ban this popular social activity entirely from public spaces. Violations of this prohibition can result in official warnings and fines, though the exact penalties vary depending on enforcement discretion. You heard that right? The simple act of playing a board game with friends over drinks can get you in legal trouble in Seville. Here's where the hypocrisy becomes, well, pretty stunning. While Seville bans dominoes for creating too much noise, the same city not only permits but actively celebrates religious brotherhoods called hermandades that launch fireworks and rockets from 9 in the morning until 11 at night during pilgrimages and festivals. These explosions create noise levels exponentially louder than dominoes clacking on tables, shaking windows and startling residents for hours on end. But religious noise is culturally protected, while the quiet social activity of playing games with friends is criminalized. The contradiction reveals that noise regulations aren't really about noise at all. They're about controlling which activities the city considers acceptable in public spaces. The domino ban extends beyond just the game itself. The same regulations prohibit eating or drinking while standing next to bar terraces instead of sitting at tables. You also cannot roll beer kegs on the ground, even briefly, because the sound disturbs the peace. Seville has essentially micromanaged every aspect of terrace behavior, creating a complex web of regulations that transform casual social activities into potential legal violations. Meanwhile, dominoes and dice are quintessentially Spanish pastimes enjoyed by older generations throughout the country. By banning these games, Seville is effectively criminalizing traditional social behaviors while simultaneously claiming to preserve Spanish culture. It's the kind of contradictory regulation that makes locals roll their eyes and ignore the law whenever enforcement isn't watching. Geography quiz. Which European nation shares a land border with Africa? If you answered Spain, you're absolutely correct. Spain controls two cities on the North African mainland, Ceuta and Melilla. These autonomous Spanish cities exist as European enclaves surrounded entirely by Morocco, creating the only point where Europe and Africa share a physical land border. Spain has ruled these territories for centuries, with Ceuta under Spanish control since 1668, and Melilla since 1497, making them longer-held Spanish territories than many regions of mainland Spain itself. These cities function as fully integrated parts of Spain, despite being geographically located in Africa. Residents are Spanish citizens with all the rights and protections of any other Spaniard. The cities use the euro, follow Spanish law, and elect representatives to the Spanish parliament in Madrid. But their location creates extraordinary challenges and controversies. Ceuta and Melilla have become primary entry points for African migrants trying to reach Europe, leading Spain to construct massive border fences topped with razor wire, essentially walling off these Spanish cities from the surrounding Moroccan territory. These fences have become symbols of European migration policy, with desperate people risking their lives to climb over or tunnel under barriers separating Africa from Europe by mere meters. Morocco has never accepted Spanish sovereignty over these territories and periodically demands their return, calling them occupied Moroccan land. Spain refuses, pointing to centuries of continuous control and the desires of current residents who overwhelmingly want to remain Spanish. This creates ongoing diplomatic tension between the two nations. The situation also highlights uncomfortable questions about colonialism and territorial claims. Spain criticizes Britain's control of Gibraltar, calling it an illegitimate colonial holdover that should be returned to Spanish sovereignty. Yet Spain refuses to apply the same logic to Ceuta and Melilla, which are equally colonial holdovers on foreign continents. The hypocrisy is obvious, and Morocco regularly points it out during diplomatic disputes. These Spanish African cities represent complex legacies of empire, migration, and national identity that Europe continues struggling to resolve. Number 3. Spain has about 8,000 kilometers of coastline, stretching along both the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean, with everything from golden sand beaches to dramatic rocky cliffs. With all that coastal territory, you'd think it would be easy to find a peaceful spot to enjoy the sea. But actually, you'd be completely wrong. Spain's most famous beaches are so absurdly overcrowded during summer that people can barely find space to lay down a towel. For example, Benidorm's Levante Beach can see up to 300,000 visitors during peak season, creating a human density that would make subway rush hour seem, well, spacious by comparison. The overcrowding has gotten so bad that some municipalities have put in reservation systems, capacity limits, and even timed entry for certain beaches. During the COVID-19 pandemic, some Spanish beaches required advance booking and only allowed limited numbers of visitors each day. Even without pandemic restrictions, if you arrive at a popular beach after 10 in the morning during July or August, you can pretty much guarantee you won't find a decent spot. Spaniards and tourists end up in aggressive competition for beach real estate, with some folks arriving before dawn just to claim the best positions. Those umbrella wars you might have heard about? Yeah, they come directly from this overcrowding problem. But here's the really absurd part. While a tiny fraction of Spain's coastline is jam-packed with people, vast stretches of Spanish beaches remain almost empty. Spain actually has hundreds of beautiful, accessible beaches that hardly get any visitors, just because they're not in the famous resort areas. Tourists tend to flock to places like Ibiza, Marbella, Barcelona, and the Balearic Islands, while ignoring equally stunning coastlines in Galicia, Asturias, Cantabria, and the less developed parts of Andalusia. This concentration of beach tourism in just a handful of locations creates nightmarish overcrowding in some spots, while leaving huge coastal areas underused. It's a totally unnecessary problem, mostly caused by tourism marketing and, honestly, herd mentality. Spain could easily spread out beach visitors across its 8,000 kilometers of coastline, but instead, everyone converges on the same dozen beaches, turning what should be a relaxing vacation into a stressful competition for space. Number 2. Spain remained neutral in both world wars but still ended up affecting global conflicts. Spain officially maintained neutrality during both World War I and World War II, refusing to take sides in the 20th century's defining conflicts. But this neutrality wasn't really about pacifism or a moral opposition to war. It was more about practical calculations, given Spain's weakness and internal instability at the time. After losing its empire in the Spanish-American War of 1898 and going through ongoing political turmoil at home, Spain just didn't have the military strength or political unity to get involved in major European conflicts. In World War I, Spain stayed out completely, which actually let the country profit by trading with both sides and avoid the devastating casualties that hit other European nations. World War II turned out to be a bit more complicated. Spain had just come out of its own brutal civil war in 1939, the same year World War II started. Francisco Franco's fascist dictatorship had gotten military support from Nazi Germany and fascist Italy during the Civil War, which created some natural alliances with the Axis powers. Franco even met with Hitler in October 1940 at Hendaye, on the French-Spanish border, where Hitler tried to convince Franco to join the war on Germany's side. But Franco made demands that were just way over the top. He wanted control of French Morocco, French Algeria, and a ton of economic aid that Germany just couldn't provide. The talks failed, and Spain never formally entered the war. Still, Spain's neutrality was actually pretty pro-Axis. Franco allowed German submarines to refuel in Spanish ports, shared intelligence with Germany, and sent the Blue Division, almost 50,000 Spanish volunteers, to fight alongside German forces on the Eastern Front against the Soviet Union. Spain also provided key raw materials like tungsten to German war industries. Franco's regime openly celebrated Axis victories and mourned their defeats. But when Germany lost in 1945, Franco quickly changed his tune, suddenly emphasizing Spain's official neutrality and claiming to have protected Jews and refugees, conveniently forgetting the years of pro-Nazi collaboration. This kind of strategic neutrality let Franco survive World War II and stay in power until 1975, showing just how Spain managed to manipulate international conflicts to serve its own interests, all while avoiding direct consequences. Number 1. Spain created the world's first global empire and the first international currency. Spain didn't just have a big empire, they actually invented the idea of a truly global empire, one that spanned multiple continents and oceans at the same time. When Spanish conquistadors and explorers spread across the Americas, Asia, and Africa in the 15th and 16th centuries, they built the first empire in history, where administrators in one continent directly governed territories in other continents thousands of miles away. Spain really pioneered transoceanic governance, international trade networks, and global financial systems that ended up shaping how the modern world works. Maybe most importantly, Spain created the first international currency that worked across multiple continents, the Spanish dollar, also called the Piece of Eight or Real de Ocho. Minted from silver pulled from mines in Bolivia and Mexico, Spanish dollars became the world's first truly global currency, accepted for trade everywhere from China to Europe to the Caribbean. The Spanish dollar was so universally recognized and trusted that the United States even based its own currency on it. Which is why the American dollar uses the same symbol. When you see a dollar sign, you're actually looking at a stylized version of the Pillars of Hercules that appeared on Spanish dollar coins, representing Spain's claim that their empire extended beyond the known world. The first stock exchanges, the first multinational corporations, the first truly global trade networks, all of these came from systems pioneered by Spain. But honestly, the human cost of these innovations was catastrophic. Spain's global empire led to genocide of indigenous populations throughout the Americas. Scholars estimate that 90% of native populations in conquered territories died within a century of Spanish arrival, either murdered directly or killed by European diseases. The Spanish set up brutal forced labor systems that worked millions to death in silver mines. The Inquisition tortured and executed thousands who refused to convert to Catholicism. Spain also pioneered the Atlantic slave trade, transporting millions of enslaved Africans across the ocean in horrific conditions, where many didn't even survive the trip. Spanish conquistadors destroyed sophisticated civilizations like the Aztecs and Incas, burning libraries and wiping out cultural knowledge that can never be recovered. The wealth that made Spain the richest nation on earth was, quite literally, built on corpses. Spain's legacy includes both groundbreaking global innovations and some of history's worst atrocities. The Spanish Empire shaped the modern world, but the price was millions of lives and the destruction of entire civilizations.